I don't think there's any question over the past couple of years that the best athletes in the SEC have resided at wide receiver. But over, let's say, the last 5 or 6 years, or going back maybe a decade or 15 or 20 years, I would argue that the best athletes in the SEC have played cornerback, and we've got some really good ones coming up in 2015. Mark Rogers TV looking at the best 5 at every position in the conference heading into next season. And, of course, we've got some great ones at corner. So let's start at number 5 with the University of Alabama senior Cyrus Jones, second-team All-SEC. And at 5'10", this kid knows that he doesn't physically intimidate anyone when he walks out onto the field. He has simply said, because of my size, because I know that big guys think they can push me around at wide receiver, I play physical. It gives me incentive to be more physical, and it's worked well for this guy. He played well against De'Runnya Wilson of Mississippi State, who towers over him at 6'5". Malachi Dupree at LSU, who caught a touchdown pass against him, but Cyrus Jones defended the last pass to preserve that Bama win in overtime, 20-13. And Laquan Treadwell didn't do much against Cyrus Jones as well. He's a converted wide receiver. He understands the game very well at this point. Again, he had a lot to learn converting from wide receiver in 2013. Nick Saban says there's no question that he is our best cover corner. And when Nick Saban says definitively, hey, this guy's the best that we have, there's no question he's the best. 42 total tackles last year, 3 interceptions, 3 pass breakups. That should be 13 pass breakups for Cyrus Jones, number 2 mark in the SEC. All right, at number 4, we've got a senior in Cam Sutton, 3-star recruit out of Tennessee, so he had to earn his way into the starting lineup at 5'10", 182, had 37 total tackles last year, 3 interceptions, tied Cyrus Jones with 13 pass breakups last season, second in the SEC. He burst onto the scene as a freshman in 2013 as a freshman first-team All-American. He's a threat on special teams as well. This kid is a film junkie, so that goes along with being, and we say just a 3-star. We know that there are tons of 3-stars that come into this league and across the nation and turn into impact players. He's another one of them, but he is just a guy that is determined to succeed and make his way to the NFL. Film junkie, watches all that film. He says countless film, he says, to gain an edge on some of the best wide receivers in the country, most notably against Laquan Treadwell. He shut him down. Treadwell's only 3 receptions in the matchup last season came against zone coverage, not against man-to-man against Sutton. Now, Amari Cooper did tear him up a bit, 9 catches for 224 and 2 touchdowns. Not all of that against Sutton, but Cooper had his way. But if you look at the Florida-Alabama matchup, Amari Cooper even ripped up Vernon Hargreaves in that one. So at number 4, we go with Cam Sutton of Tennessee, and with an improved pass rush at expected with the Volunteers this year, he should be even more effective. At number 3, we go to Auburn, down in the Plains, and senior Jonathan Jones, second-team All-SEC, picked off 6 passes. That's the most of any returning player, and 4 of those prevented touchdowns. They were in the end zone. He had 36 total tackles, 11 pass breakups, and 17 passes defended total. He was a 3-star coming out of high school, and you got to consider, even though he gave up some plays last year, the Auburn pass rush was pretty much non-existent most of the season without Dee Ford moving on to the NFL and with Carl Lawson hurt. Again, guys like Jonathan Jones had to cover and cover and cover for 5-10 seconds at times. He's been hampered by a foot injury. He's not playing this spring. That could be a cause of concern because it's the same foot that held him out the first few games and limited his playing time in the first few games of last season when he had a stress fracture in 2014. He's an emerging leader on the Auburn defense. Jonathan Jones, senior corner at number 3 in the SEC. All right, number 2, we go to a place where we typically go for secondary excellence, and that's Baton Rouge. LSU's TreDavious White, 33 total tackles in 2014, 2 picks, 6 pass breakups. For an LSU defense that gave up just 162 yards passing per game. This kid comes from the same hometown as Morris Claiborne, and they are godbrothers, is what they call themselves. They are extremely close. Claiborne, ironically, even though he's turned into an NFL star, was not highly recruited out of high school, but this kid, TreDavious White, stud coming out of high school, expected to be a star, and he's playing his way into it right now. Emerged onto the scene in 2013, really cemented his starting spot at LSU this past fall. Rashard Robinson, who could have teamed with White to make up the best cornerback tandem in the SEC, was suspended. He's kicked off the team temporarily, re-enrolling, will most likely not play football in 2015 and looking to come back in 2016. Our number 2 cornerback in the SEC is TreDavious White of LSU. Our number 1 guy, with all these lists and top 5s that we go through, it's a difficult process. I usually look at 15 to 20 players, narrow it down to 12 or 15, then down to 8, and finally get it down to 5. And choosing the number 1 guy, that's typically tough as well, except for when it comes to cornerback in the SEC, because this guy's the best in the business, period, anywhere. Vernon Hargreaves, Florida. I know the Gators have been down, but the defense has been good, and he's one of the big reasons why. Not just first-team All-SEC, first-team All-American. And this is probably the position, outside of offensive line, of course, where you don't have any stats, where you really have to kind of look at the stats through a filter. They're not going to jump off the board, number one, because stats are misleading in the secondary, and much of that has to do with how many quarterbacks are going to actually throw at you. And when it comes to Vernon Hargreaves, unless you're Blake Sims throwing to Amari Cooper last year, SEC quarterbacks didn't give it a big try. 50 total tackles, so he comes up despite the 5'11", 195 frame, which is decent for a cornerback, not huge. He does come up and run support. 3 interceptions last year, 16 passes defended, so despite not seeing the action on his side of the field, still led the SEC in passes defended and had 13 pass breakups. He is a lockdown, shutdown guy, top to bottom. He studies film. He's not just a natural talent. He's got the technique. He's learned his fundamentals. He is a solid fundamental corner that's got the great talent and the great instincts as well. Quarterbacks typically stay away, but he still, again, led the SEC in passes defended with 16. So that's the top 5 at cornerback. Here on Mark Rogers TV, we've got Vernon Hargreaves of Florida at number 1. Our number 2 guy is Tre'Davious White of LSU. At number 3, Jonathan Jones of Auburn. Number 4, we go to Tennessee and Cam Sutton. And at number 5, Alabama's Cyrus Jones. Need to hear from you now. Give us your top 5 SEC cornerbacks for 2015 right here on Mark Rogers TV.